Enjoy all episodes of the RCWR Show on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio.
Catch the RCWR Show with Lee Sanders every Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, only on Spreaker.com. Covering all things WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, Global Force Wrestling, Paragon Pro Wrestling, any and all things wrestling and beyond, as well as an occasional appearance by some kick-ass awesome guests. 10 p.m. Eastern, only on Spreaker.com. Hey, if you can't catch our shows live, you can scoop it up on demand on great platforms such as Spreaker, iTunes, Mixler, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and on YouTube. Just use the keywords, The RCWR Show.
Warning, the RCWR Show with Lee Sanders is intended for a mature audience only. The following is an Infinity One Productions presentation, keeping it honest, insightful, and interactive. Covering the latest in wrestling and beyond since 2011. You're listening to the RCWR Show. Now, your host, live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., as featured on Wrestling8.com and TNA Insider, Lee Sanders.
Let's sync this up again. All right, so we are live right now. We're doing a special simulcast for you guys right now, as we are live on Spreaker and we are live on YouTube, and for very good reason, as I just watched the conclusion of the 2016 edition of the WWE Hall of Fame. Some of you have come to know about our WWE Hall of Fame coverage that we've been doing for you all WrestleMania weekend for the past couple of years now. I think this is our third year in a row that we've managed to cover the WWE Hall of Fame. Actually, it might actually be our fourth. I'm not really too sure about that. I'd have to do some research and get back with y'all. But for sure, I know this is our third consecutive year. But I beg to differ. I think we've been always on top of it since we first came into existence. But man, if you were not able to check out the Hall of Fame tonight, I know there were a lot of you all that maybe had work, you had commitments with family, significant other. Have no fear, especially since it was a long WWE Hall of Fame ceremony. Came on at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it actually did not wrap up until just about maybe 10, almost 15 minutes ago on the East Coast, as it pretty much had wrapped up about 15 minutes before midnight. So it gives you an idea of exactly how long that was there. I have a lot to say about this. I do want to hear from those of you that saw the Hall of Fame ceremony tonight. You can interact with me a number of ways. You can hit me up on Twitter at the RCWR Show, Facebook, Infinity One Productions. That's with an E. Spell out one, Infinity One Productions. I had a brain fart there because I was watching this mic as I was moving it, and it kind of looked as though it was getting ready to fall, but no, we're okay. But yeah, Facebook, Infinity One Productions. That's with an E. Make sure you spell out one, O-N-E, Infinity One Productions. Last call, by the way, for those of you that have not entered our WrestleMania 32 prize giveaway. All the info you need is on our Facebook page. We pinned the thread to the very top, so when you land on our Facebook page, it's the first thing that you see. But we have some really cool and awesome WrestleMania prizes that we're going to be giving away. We will be announcing the winners Sunday. We'll be naming one batch of winners during the midday, and then we hope to name the other batch of winners during the evening, hopefully right before WrestleMania comes on, with a recap on the WrestleMania post show. But I do want to hear from you guys, so hit me up. We also have the chat room active on Spreaker in case you want to pop in there, say hello. And as I mentioned, we are simulcasting this right now on YouTube and Spreaker. So if you're accessing this on YouTube, welcome as well. Let's jump right into it. So, man, what a emotional night this was. I'm just going to go right at it. I'm going to kind of go in order, but if you've read the title of this episode, no matter how you're accessing it, then yeah, let's first address that elephant in the room. Shocking. Was it really shocking? I mean, I think many of us kind of like came to suspect this, but then at the same time, I think many of us didn't quite think that this was going to be happening like this soon. I don't think. Which is the icon Sting. He has announced his retirement from in-ring competition. He decided that he wanted to retire on this very night at the WWE Hall of Fame under the WWE umbrella. And you gotta home in on the last few words that he had said as he wrapped up his induction speech, which is basically, this is not goodbye, it's just, I'll see you down the road, or something to that effect. But he definitely made no mistake about the words that he used as far as him retiring. He did. I played it back 3 times. He has officially announced his retirement as a in-ring competitor. Now, he did not say those words, so we, as the fans that were watching, have to put 2 and 2 together. He announced his retirement as a in-ring competitor, but as far as a performer goes, I mean, that's a different story in itself right there. There's a big difference between a in-ring performer and a performer. If you're just a performer, then you are thus an actor, and you're coming out and you're working a particular angle, all this other good stuff. But I was kind of like, wow, when I had heard that, because if you guys remember some weeks back, there were reports floating around that Sting was going to be announcing his retirement at the Hall of Fame ceremony because of whatever was going on with the injuries that he had sustained in that match he had with Seth Rollins at Night of Champions a while back. And he rebuked the rumors that were put out there. He said, hey, yeah, my neck did have a little bit of problems, but no, I can actually still go at it. As far as one more match being in me, never say never. We'll just see. Stay tuned is pretty much how he was deflecting the rumors that were going on. But now that we are hearing this, I mean, it was definitely like a wow, especially one of 2 of the last interviews that he gave recently. I mean, just like leading right on up into WrestleMania weekend, he was asked if he would entertain the idea of doing one more match, and he has said, oh yeah, for sure. I'm trying very hard to get my one match with The Undertaker. Like, that's the one thing that's really left for me to do in the WWE, and maybe then I'll call it a day. But yeah, I definitely have been talking with folks in the back, trying to make this happen. We'll see how it goes down. But you're kind of left to the impression of, okay, well, maybe we're going to. But I tell you, this just really, when you kind of take a step back and you just think about what's going to be going down at WrestleMania in less than 20-something hours, you can't help but now think that maybe, just maybe, Undertaker will definitely be losing to Shane at Mania now that Sting has announced he's pretty much done as an in-ring performer. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts with regards to that one, but that one we definitely have to address that off the break before we just really go down the entire card of the Hall of Fame ceremony. But Sting's Hall of Fame induction speech, it was a good one. I enjoyed it. I didn't really appreciate the fact that he was really sticking to the paper that was outlined between he and the monkeys in the back, as I like to call them. But due to time restraints, because this thing went into mad OT, I can totally respect him sticking to the script. But we saw a great introduction by the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. I'm just jotting or rather going over the notes that I had took as I was watching this ceremony. So for those of you watching on YouTube, if you see my eyes keep going down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. So forgive me in advance if I'm not looking directly, making that eye contact with you all respectively. But we saw a great introduction by the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, who had brought up one of the first times he had took on Sting. It was at the 1985 Clash of the Champions, as he had heard the rumblings about this nice, young, good-looking, blonde-haired kid, great body, great smile, great physique. Ladies love him, and he was like, okay, well, you know what? This is the guy I want to work with then. I want to do everything I can to help put this young man on the map. We can make a lot of good money together. And Sting has been one of Ric Flair's opponents for years upon years upon years upon years. Definitely right there with the Dusty Rhodes, Ricky the Dragon Steamboats, Harley Race, all that good stuff. But it was great seeing Ric Flair come out. Ric Flair kind of put a little bit more of the emphasis on him. Boy, was he kind of emotional. He was bringing up his daughter. I like the nod that he had gave to Dusty Rhodes and Roddy Piper passing. I thought it was only fitting that with this final induction of the night that it would be Ric Flair that would mention those names. And I think the reason why he got so choked up as he was trying to set up Sting was because, man, here are guys that played such a pivotal role in his career, and they're gone. And I guess it really kind of hit him that, man, he's kind of like one of the last of the Mohicans, so to speak. So I guess it was really kind of kicking in for him. I'm sure it's really, really kind of kicking in now that Sting has announced his retirement and all. But we saw a really good, strong setup for Sting. Couple of keynotes. He brought up the fact that if it wasn't for Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior, he probably most likely would not even be in the wrestling business. He also gave a nice, good, strong nod to Ric Flair, basically citing that it was Ric Flair that put him on the map and that he would forever be grateful to the Nature Boy. He definitely went at great length talking about his career, his humble beginnings, pretty much recapping what had came about on the Sting Into the Light DVD that was released by WWE last year. I'm not sure how many of you guys had checked that out, but if you haven't, you definitely want to go out of your way to scoop that up as soon as you guys get the opportunity. But he was basically giving us recaps of what all had transpired. Not really too much emphasis on when he finally came to the WWE and all that, and I think maybe that was because of the time restraints and all, so totally understandable. One thing that I did think was pretty cool was when Sting had mentioned the incarnations of Sting that we've seen over the years, from Surfer Sting to Crow Sting. He even did a nice subtle acknowledge of Joker Sting from his days in TNA wrestling, and it was kind of cool when he brought it up, because when he was going over his personas, he was like, oh, yeah, I was Surfer Sting, I was Crow Sting, I was NWO Wolfpack Sting. Does Joker Sting even count? Should we even consider Joker Sting? And you had a nice, it wasn't unanimous, but you had a decent amount of a reaction to that, as the fans were like, yeah, Joker Sting, and he was like, yeah, okay, well, Joker Sting. So I thought that was kind of nice that he took a nice little nod to his days in TNA. I'm sure somewhere that had made Dixie Carter smile or whatnot. But I tell you, honestly, am I surprised that he announced his retirement? Yes, and I'll explain to you the reason why. I felt that before 2016 was out, quite honestly, that Sting was maybe going to announce his retirement. I thought maybe he was going to try to see if he could come back for possibly, one more match or whatever, kind of go based off of that, and then maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't see him again until 2017, and he has a match against The Undertaker, and then that's pretty much it. That was my original thinking. But with him announcing his retirement tonight, I just don't see that happening. I think Sting, aka Steve Borden, is in a place in his life right now where everything has just come full circle for him, and he's just at a point right now where it's like, you know what, this is a good way to go out. It doesn't get any better than this. And I tell you, if that was his mentality, I'm sure he probably did a lot of soul searching, a lot of praying and talking to God, since he is a man of the faith. I'm sure he probably talked to his wife and his kids. I'm sure he thought about this long and hard ever since whatever went down with him at Night of Champions. And I think he just said, you know what, this just feels right. I'm just going with the flow, and I think this is the way to go. If you ask me, am I a little bit sad? Not really. I mean, what more can you say for a guy that has been able to accomplish so much in his career, and he's able to go out on his own terms? He has not passed over due to abusing drugs. He's not severely disabled to the point that he's in a wheelchair, or he's paralyzed from the neck down. What more could you say about a guy that is able to been there, done that, walk out on his own accord, still be able to enjoy his life with a beautiful new wife? They're getting ready to celebrate their 1-year anniversary in a couple of weeks, later this month. So congrats in advance, Sting. So, I mean, you can't really say too much. I mean, I think for a lot of us, if we had the opportunity to make it into the wrestling business, and we got to a point where we were in the WWE, and we just look at how Sting was just able to just, you know, he had his WrestleMania moment, he had a couple of high-profile matches, whether it be on Raw, or he was involved in a match at another pay-per-view or whatever, and then icing on the cake, he gets to go into the Hall of Fame under the WWE umbrella. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, quite honestly. So, great way for him to go out. I know there's probably going to be a lot of people that's going to be like, oh man, but we didn't get that match with The Undertaker. And I mean, I have been very consistent with this. Longtime listeners know this. And that is, if it was a situation where Sting and Undertaker were maybe 5 to 10 years younger, I'd be all fine for seeing the matchup. But given the stages of where these men are physically, and just paying attention to what they respectively have been able to do in the ring within recent years, I don't think it would live up to the expectations that a lot of fans are picturing in their mind. You know what I'm saying? You come up with a really cool idea in your head, and then when you put it down on paper, you're like, oh, well, if I tweak this, I tweak that, I'll put this way, that'll be good. But then when you actually start bringing those designs to life, it's kind of like, well, on second thought, this was actually kind of a bad idea. Didn't really think about this, didn't really think about that. I think for a lot of you guys, if you just kind of kick back and you really, really think about it, you'd agree 5-10 years ago maybe, but great way for Sting to go out. Let's take it up to the very top. I don't want to spend too much long on this because I got to save all my energy for WrestleMania. I got to make sure I'm bringing it. Not to mention, I think this is this is our third show that we're doing in the span of the week so far, as we did cover the NXT TakeOver Dallas Fallout. If you guys have missed that, you can actually check that out on the downloads. There's also the radio version up on our YouTube channel. We saw things kick off with The Godfather being inducted, as he was inducted by JBL and Ron Simmons. Those guys are just so hilarious. There were so many stories that JBL was trying to tell and setting up The Godfather, but Ron Simmons kept interrupting him, saying, man, we can't talk about that. Are you crazy? You're going to get us both in trouble. This is a PG show. Come on now. This is a PG company. We can't talk about those things. And it was a nice running gag. It kept going back and forth like that for a couple of minutes until finally they both got on the same page and admitted that, yeah, it would be kind of bad to tell those stories, not to mention their respected wives hearing about these stories. Yeah, they'd get into some serious trouble. So from there, we went to Godfather himself, Charles Wright. His speech was pretty short. One thing that was notably okay, and I don't think we really should be surprised by this, but I mean, at the same time, it would have been nice had he'd given some type of a nod to that history. But we saw Charles Wright mention nothing of the Papa Shango character, nor his days as the good father. I'm sure many of y'all have remembered that, especially when he was doing this thing with Rights to Censor. I didn't mention any of those things. It was a short 10-minute speech. Probably the one thing that mainly stuck out in my mind was his son Isaiah. His birthday was today, and he wanted for folks to wish him a happy birthday because he really wasn't feeling that well. Well, nobody wished him a happy birthday. I'm not sure if Charles Wright was maybe looking for a happy birthday song to his son Isaiah or what, but there was a nice little clap, a little ovation, but that was pretty much it. But there really was no substance. There really was no meat and potatoes, as I like to call it. A lot of weight to what Charles Wright, aka the Godfather, said of his Hall of Fame induction. If I had to rate, this was definitely the weakest induction acceptance speech of the night. The weakest. And it was about 10 minutes, maybe a little less than that. Jerry Lawler, trying to do his job. He unfortunately had caught a little bit of heckles and hisses from the crowd as he was plugging the WWE Network, saying if fans in attendance at the Hall of Fame ceremony tonight had not checked it out yet, what were they waiting for, since they can sign up for it for free and all that. And I know Jerry Lawler was just trying to do his job, but I'm kind of like, somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony was only viewable through the WWE Network. So I'm not sure if WWE's marketing strategy was, okay, well, for these guys that are in attendance, let's make sure we're plugging the WWE Network, because if these guys haven't signed up yet, I don't know, the placement for it was just kind of bad. I think what honestly should have happened was, after they got done with Charles Wright, they should have just went to a commercial, show the whole WWE Network, why you need to sign up, how it's free, yada yada yada. And as we are watching that on our TV sets, that should have been playing on the Titantron at the ceremony for those in attendance. I think that's a better way that they should have gone about that. And now that I've said that, wouldn't be too surprised if maybe they kind of switched it up that way next year. From there, we saw Big Bad Vader, who was setting up the induction for Steve the Lariat Hansen. And Vader, he had told a really cool story about the AWA days, how he, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Shawn Michaels, Larry Zbyszko, how they were all down there in the AWA doing their thing. And then here you had Steve Hansen. He came in and he said Steve Hansen was like a mentor and a good friend to him. And he loved it so much when he was able to reconnect with him in Japan, and they were tearing it up for a good number of years. It was a great, awesome moment right there. Vader had also mentioned his time in the All Japan Wrestling promotion. He shared a really cool story. I'm sure many of y'all had heard the story, the incident that happened at the Tokyo Dome, about 75,000 strong, and his eye had came out of the socket, and he told a cool story about the mastodon. I'll stop right there. If you guys don't know about the story, that's actually pretty cool to go out and research on your own. But it was a great setup for Steve Hansen. And one thing about the Lariat, Steve Hansen, and I was quite amazed at how some people were actually kind of bored with this man's speech, because he just kept going on and on and on. Was it a bit winded? Yeah, but I mean, me personally, I loved every single minute of it. I love those old school stories and all that, and I mean, it was a really great, good feel moment. If I had to look at the one speech that was like a good heart and soul moment, it would definitely go to Hansen. And just the cool stories that he was telling. He probably ran the longest, I believe. I got him clocking in. It's a close one, because between him and the Freebirds, if they were about even, I'd be pretty shocked to hear. But I've got Stan Hansen. I knew I was messing his name up. I apologize, folks. Long night, forgive me. Stan Hansen, I got him clocking in at about 25-30 minutes max. But, he had mentioned his best friend, mentor, Terry Funk. How is it, if it wasn't for Terry Funk and the Funk family, he just probably, no telling where he would be wrestling career-wise. He also took the time out to thank John Bradshaw Layfield, saying, hey, it's really nice that you've been mentioning my name all of these years, little subtle touches here and there, really appreciate that. And I think he kind of knows that JBL definitely one of the biggest advocates for trying to get him into the Hall of Fame. So I'm sure that kind of made JBL smile somewhere in the back when he had heard that. He also took the time out to thank Chavo Guerrero, Chief Peter Maivia, of course, Bruno Sammartino. We all know about the infamous story where Hansen had broke Bruno's neck. Bruno was out for like about 4-5 months. Vince McMahon Sr., he's like, okay, yeah, we don't want to have anything else to do with you. I'll tell you what, let me make a few connections. We'll send you on down to Japan or whatever. And but the thing with Bruno, which is something greatly that Stan Hansen had appreciated right on to this very day, as he's apparently engaged Bruno in phone conversations over the years, every couple of months. And that's Bruno, despite having a broken neck, Bruno not once came at Hansen in a very mean, derogatory manner, even though that would have been his right to do so. He was just a real class act, or a real professional about it. He realized that it was an accident. Accidents happen. It comes with the work that they do. And he was forever grateful that Bruno, really was just such a top-notch class act of a guy. He also gave nod to Andre the Giant, citing that he owes a big bulk of his success in Japan to Andre the Giant, as it really had helped put him in the map, combined with a handshake from Giant Bubba that saw him working in Japan for his promotion for like about 20 years. So it was a great moment right there. There was a funny line that came about with Hansen, and he said, I've bored you all long enough, but there's a couple of things I want to say. And at this point, it was just kind of like, dude, just keep going. It's like the great stories that you're telling. Go for it, man. Go for it. Probably, I would have to say this was the second weakest Hall of Fame acceptance speech of the night, but it wasn't as weak as The Godfather. And I love this woman to death. The first African American WWE Women's Champion. Of course, I'm talking about Miss Jacqueline Moore, Jackie. It was great seeing Team 3D set up her induction. They had talked about how Mark Carano, the senior director of the talent division, had went up to them and said, hey, look, we're going to be inducting Jackie into the Hall of Fame. And we had asked her, who did she want to induct her? And she said she wants you guys. And they were so flattered. They were so honored by that, because they have been friends with Jackie for many, many, many years now. Devon saying that their family, and that for him and Bubba, as far as they were concerned in the business that they're in, if you're lucky, you can only make just one handful of friends. And they both were proud to mention the fact that Jackie is one of those friends on that hand. So it was a great setup. Jackie, she has found the fountain of youth. She still looks just as I remember of her from the Attitude Era days. I know I saw a little bit of her work off and on when she was in TNA wrestling, and she just looked the same. If anything had changed, it just looked as though she had got a little bit more toned up. But still, you just recognized her off the break. But her speech was short, sweet. I couldn't help but notice some people were like, hey, Lee, she didn't even mention when she had won the Cruiserweight title. And I'm kind of like, hey, I'm sure she just appreciated the fact that she was able to be on that stage, do her speech, roll out. Not really enough substance, but there was definitely more of a backdrop as far as what had got her into wrestling. She talked about how she loved watching the Von Erichs on TV. One day there was an ad that she saw during like a commercial break that said, if you want to become a pro wrestler, call this number. And pretty much the rest was history. I mean, she worked, what was that? I can't think of the promotion right now, but she did work the independents before eventually making her way to the WWE. She also took the time out to thank the following divas, as she had really great memorable matches with them, great programs: Trish Stratus, Lita, Molly Holly, Victoria, Sable, Terry Runnels. So great stuff right there. Even though it was short, there was definitely a lot more substance when you compare it to The Godfather. My favorite part of the show, I heard the rumblings about this, but I wasn't quite sure how they were going to execute it. It was nice to see how it was executed. You had the WWE Legacy Hall of Fame inductees. They were as follows, which is Pat O'Connor, aka Irish Pat, the first man to hold the NWA and AWA titles at the same time. You also had... there was a German wrestler. I'm going to need somebody's help for that one. I thought I had wrote the guy's name down, but apparently it didn't make it on here. But there was a German wrestler. His last name started with an H. Creator of the Bear Hug, apparently. Frank Gotch, early 20th century, first American champion. Mildred Burke, who would go on to hold the NWA Women's Championship. It was a reign that she had lasting for 20 years. Art Thomas, Ed the Strangler Lewis, who was unbeatable for almost 4 decades, believe it or not. Lou Thesz, of course. Lou Thesz, the Babe Ruth of wrestlers, also one of the main faces in NWA's popularity. Hope you're enjoying our recap of the Hall of Fame so far. I'd love to hear from you guys that saw it tonight. Tell me a little bit about your highs, your lows, the stuff in between if you like. Shout out to Brendan. George Hackensack. Yeah, that was the name. George Hackensack also went into the WWE Legacy Hall of Fame. Again, he was the innovator of the Bear Hug. Teddy Roosevelt citing that if he wasn't involved in politics, wasn't a wrestler, said that he would probably be a wrestler like him. So, good stuff right there. Hope you're enjoying the recap so far. What do we got left here? We got 4 more inductees to talk about. Let's get this negative one out the way. It's kind of a negative for me for various reasons. Of course, I'm talking about Dana White inducting Joan London as Joan London was the recipient of the Warrior Award. I actually had put Dana on mute because when I watched her come out, I just had literally shades of last year. It just, her body language, it was kind of like, oh no, this looks like it's going to be a repeat from last year. So I ended up putting her on mute. I should have put closed captioning on, but I had asked you guys out there, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm hearing the information wrong. I'd love to be corrected. But I had put a tweet out asking if her speech was coming off the same way as last year, and somebody had responded. They were like, yeah, it is literally the same speech, almost word for word, from last year. So when I heard that, it kind of made me go, well, damn, I'm kind of glad I put this on mute then. I have a lot to say, but I'm not going to say too much about this whole Warrior Award thing. Joan London and them bridging the gap there, and look, that's great that she overcame cancer, but I still feel the same way that I did earlier this week when I was talking about it on the RCWR Show, which you can catch Tuesday nights 10 p.m. Eastern live on Spreaker.com if you love all things wrestling and beyond. I basically said that they are doing a disservice to Jim Hellwig's memory, that the award that he wanted for WWE to make and give out yearly was the Jimmy Miranda Award. And to basically take Warrior's, what is now like his dying wish, even though he didn't know it was his dying wish, but to basically take that concept of his and just do it in this way where you've got Dana as a focal point. And I've always been one of those guys, keeping it honest, keeping it insightful, keeping it interactive. I may not always, I've always tried to do my best to not go to the beat of everybody's drum. I'm not one of those people that's gonna be like an ass kisser because, oh, I hope I get a retweet from this person. Oh, I hope I get a follow from this person. Oh, I don't do that. If I think something is off, I call it how I see it. And I got to be the only one that's kind of like, okay, so past 2 years we've seen Dana Warrior come out now, and she comes out like this woman that's just so like, oh, if it wasn't for Stephanie and Paul coming to us and befriending us and welcoming us, like they would be out on the streets or whatever. And it's like, no, Jim Hellwig, the deals that he had got set up in motion before he passed, his family was going to be more than okay off of the royalties. And I just don't like seeing Dana in this position where she's coming out and she's doing these long promos, these long speeches where she's just so emotional and she's just so worked up. And I need a switch up. Let's be a little bit more poppy. Let's be a little bit more, and I look at her and I just can't help but go, she's a very beautiful woman. She is a very stunning, beautiful woman. I hope that for the sake of the kids, that a situation occurs where, of course it takes time, but I hope she gets to a point where eventually she's able to come across somebody that she can love again and welcome into her heart. And, the rest will be history. I mean, it took Vicky Guerrero a while, and it took her a couple of tries, but, eventually she got there. She got married last year, if I'm not mistaken. But Joan London being the recipient for this award, I mean, like I said on Twitter, and I stand behind it, you want to send me your hate email, go on ahead. I don't care. I'm not going to read it personally. But I still feel that with the way this Warrior Award has been designed for the past couple of years now, it's nothing more than a good feel WWE PR marketing publicity stunt. No different than the NBA cares, the NFL cares, this organization cares. That's just basically how it reminds me of. And I'm quite sick and tired of it. Now look, if WWE wants to continue to do this cancer award thing, then by all means go for it, but it's not living up to the memory of the Ultimate Warrior. That Jimmy Miranda award, it needs to happen, and if I were to make a bold prediction, I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be created in the next 3 years. I think WWE is aware of the subtle backlash that they have with regards to this, and I think they're going to do everything they can to acknowledge that. So shout out to Razor. Razor said she announced her daughter Magadan will one day debut in WWE's future. She sounded like someone perfecting promo skills tonight. I hope so, man. I hope so. But Joan London, I don't really have anything to say about Joan London. I pretty much put her on mute. Look, got a lot of respect for what she has done as a journalist. I definitely have her in great high regards for the battle that she had went through with the cancer and all that other good stuff. But for me, just comes off like a bad publicity stunt in WWE trying to make themselves look good and all that. So that's all I really see. So you guys got to forgive me if I really don't spend that much more time talking about Joan Warrior getting this Warrior award. I just hope they really switch it up. You know, like I would like to see maybe a wounded warrior that fought for the country and went on to do like some big awesome things. I would hope that maybe they would be the recipient for the award. I just would love to see, like, rather than it continue to go to someone connected to cancer, I would just really love to see it go in a very strong, different direction. So very curious as far as what's going to happen next year. All right, let's continue on here. Where do I want to go next? I think I'll tackle this one next. We had Snoop Dogg, who was inducted by John Cena. John Cena looking a little bit more slimmer, less bulkier. Snoop Dogg being inducted by John Cena. You know, John Cena, and he had got the boos. I tell you, he's been off TV for a good amount of time now. And yet, John Cena, no matter how long he's gone, he pops up and the crowd still sticks it to him. It's hilarious, I tell you. One of those guys that is just so ice cold. The way he's able to adapt when he is in hostile territory. Guys can learn from that, Roman Reigns. Guys can learn from that. Seriously, man. Seriously. But no, we saw John Cena, who I thought did a really brilliant job in explaining why Snoop Dogg is going into the celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame. It made me come away saying, wow, I really didn't know Snoop Dogg had that long of a connection with the WWE. I didn't know the extent of him just whenever WWE was in whatever town and Snoop Dogg was in the area, that a lot of times Snoop Dogg would just show up and he'd hang out with them in the back. And I had no idea all that was going on. I know that he had hosted an episode of Raw. I know he had a couple of WrestleMania appearances with Divas and all that. He was involved in some silly little segments and all that. But for me, I just didn't think that it was worthy enough for him to go into the celebrity wing. Now, out of 100%, there was a part of me that was like, when I first heard this, I'm like, no, I'm at like 20%. Now that everything has been kind of laid out a little bit better, I'm kind of now at like 55%, but there's still a majority of me that's kind of like, well, wait a minute. How can you, like, have Lemmy not go into the celebrity wing, given the connection that he had with Triple H, and you just talk about like a good pay it forward kind of coming full circle. I mean, after all, Triple H, he did go to Lemmy's funeral. He had received an invitation and all that, and you heard what Triple H had said, or Paul Levesque had said, and you're kind of like, oh wow, so they were like buddies apparently. Okay, did his music, entrance, all that good stuff, and it just would have made sense for me to see Lemmy posthumously go into the celebrity wing. And the only thing I can say is, well, maybe that didn't happen this year because WWE had already met their quota for posthumous people getting inducted or being the recipients of an award. Okay, granted. Now, I'll give you that one. But what about Regis Philbin, who a lot of people were expecting was going to go into the celebrity wing? And that didn't happen. I made the argument of Kid Rock earlier this week on the show. If you guys don't quite understand the connection with Kid Rock, I'd encourage you to go back, listen to the show to understand why I mentioned him. And then after you hear what I have to say, the valid points that I make, you're like, oh yeah, okay, well that makes a lot of sense. So how all these guys have a backseat to Snoop Dogg is kind of like, you know, I understand why he's the recipient, why he's going into that division, but there's still that part of me that's like, wow, so he gets to go in before all these other guys. It was nice seeing Snoop Dogg, you know, his speech. It really came from the heart. He really appreciated the love that he was getting from the WWE. And I loved also how he took that time out to acknowledge his cousin, Sasha Banks, talking about how one of the first WrestleManias he had took her to, she was just a young kid. She was a young teenager, but he could kind of tell that it was definitely a business that she wanted to be involved with, and he's very, very proud of her, loves where she is now in her career. So, you know, everything just really, I just love how all the dots connect. And yeah, you know, Snoop Dogg kind of won me over a little bit, but I'm still sticking to my guns. I still feel that all those other guys should have gone in before him. You know, to each its own. But he had a really nice acceptance speech. I will definitely give him that. It was a very, very good acceptance speech. Big Boss Man, his daughters and his mom, you know, it was pretty good. It was, I agree with what the main daughter had said. And, you know, Big Boss Man has some really, really cute daughters. I will give him that. His daughters are very cute. Apparently, there was a lot of hazing going on of these girls because of how big they were. First off, ain't nothing wrong with big girls. I'm a sucker for. I'm about to marry a cute big girl. So I mean, I know what I'm talking about. There ain't nothing wrong with a cute big girl, especially a cute big girl that's got a cute face. Ain't nothing wrong with that. So I mean, all this hazing that's going on because these women that you had saw tonight, they were big. It's like you do realize who their father was, right? Big Boss Man, who for many, many years had, I mean, we saw his weight fluctuate. I mean, one minute he was skinny and he was big, and next minute he was like medium sized and he was super overweight, and you know, it's like that family was eating good. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I just think that for the people that were just hazing these young women online, big bad fucking keyboard warriors. That's all I have to say to you guys. I know damn well that if you were walking down the street, you don't operate like that. I know you guys don't operate that way, and it's just rather appalling and disgusting that some of you guys, you see something that physically you don't like, rather than you just keep those type of comments to yourself and just keep it moving along. It's just really kind of sad that a lot of you guys, you know, not all of you, I know there's a lot of you guys, you play it right, you do it smart, but I feel sorry for those of you that operate the way that you operate. Heaven forbid the day you become a parent. I pray when you have kids that somebody shames your kid like that, name calling and all that. I hope you remember how you did it years prior, and how it basically came back full circle to bite you in the rear end. I always say, always kind of think of yourself in that other person's position before you jump out there like that, But I thought his daughters were beautifully stunning. The wife, obviously, still grieving over the loss. They all looked pretty emotionally, like, you could tell they still miss him, even though, God, it's been so long since Boss Man had passed away. But I tell you, for some, it's still a struggle. And the family, the surviving members, they still looked as though they were still struggling with that. Really not much I can say about their speech, though. I mean, in a nutshell, it was basically, hey, this is a really cool, surreal moment. Only wish that Dad was actually here to accept this induction. We really miss him. We really wish that he would have been here to accept this award instead of us. That's pretty much the main thing that they kept driving home. And enough said about that one. Of course, I'm going to end it on a high note. I think a lot of you guys knew I was going to end it on this note, which was New Day inducting the Freebirds. They kind of addressed the whole situation on why they were the ones to induct the Freebirds, and they pretty much had said there's a lot of similarities, which do we really need to go over? I don't think we do. I mean, you guys get it, the Freebird rule, not to mention the fact that the way New Day operates, it's basically brotherhood, which is exactly what the Freebirds were. They were all about brotherhood. They did any and everything together, up and down the highways together, you name it. They did it all together. It was awesome seeing Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin come out, the only two surviving members of the Freebirds. They came out to their Leonard Skinner music, and I wasn't sure what they were doing. It kind of seemed like we were watching like a haggard down Hackensmith. Yeah, Hackensmith. That's the guy's name that we were talking about earlier that went into the Hall of Fame legacy wing for this year. Hackensmith. Yeah, that's the name. Thank you, Brendan. But no, Freebirds, they went in, and we saw Jimmy Garvin and Michael Hayes. They came out looking like worn out, exhausted DX. I mean, there's already memes and GIFs floating around of these guys coming out, and they were doing their dancing and their thrusting, and it just looks so scary and hilarious. I was enjoying every single minute of it. I loved after the music was done and all that, and they both were out of breath and all that. Both of those guys, boy, I tell you, Jimmy Garvin, man, he looks different. That's all I gotta say. I did not recognize him. I was like, who is this guy that's coming out? And you think of Jimmy Garvin, and you remember him with Precious and all that, and Baby Doll, and you remember the hair, the beard, the nice chest cave, beer rug and all that other stuff. And I was like, who is that? And I was like, wow, that's Jimmy Garvin. But they told some really, really great stories. There was a famous stripper story that Michael Hayes had told that involved them going to this stripper bar, and Hayes decided that he was going to take a roll of quarters or whatever, and he was going to play himself a game of Pac-Man. And long story short, there was like a brawl that had went down. That's about as much as I'm going to tell you, because I'd like to try to encourage you guys that already have the network. I'd like for you guys to go check it out. I don't know how much is heavily going to be edited, so I'm definitely going to be right there with you guys watching it whenever it is available on demand, and I'm curious how much of that story that they're going to be leaving in there. For those of you that might be a little bit curious what Jimmy Garvin has been up to in recent years, he now serves in a ministry to help the homeless and needy with his wife. So that's a really awesome transition right there. You had Ray Gordy, the son that is. He had talked about the origins of World Class Championship Wrestling, and he had talked about his dad, Buddy Jack Roberts Jr. He briefly had talked as well. The guys ended up telling a couple of more stories. Oh my God, the stories. Michael Hayes, man, I tell you, could you imagine Michael Hayes like in his 20s now? That would be very interesting. That would be very, very interesting. They were the stealer of the night. I think many of you that watched the Hall of Fame tonight would definitely agree. Freebirds, they had the stealer moment of the night. They just ran with it. I wish that would have closed out the show, but given the way things had played out with Sting, how the hell can you top what Sting did? That was like, because I just kept wondering, I'm like, as it was building up to Sting showing up, I'm thinking, man, we just had like an awesome moment with the Freebirds. How the heck is Sting going to top this? How's he even going to maybe match it? And sure enough, we would see how. But Freebirds definitely had the most charismatic, energetic, crowd reacting induction speech of the night. It was nice also seeing Michael Hayes take the microphone. I mean, it was pretty much the Michael Hayes show. I mean, all due respect to Jimmy Garvin, he's a completely different man now. He's found God and he's doing the ministry with his wife and all that. This was pretty much the Michael Hayes show, and Michael Hayes was just, as far as I'm concerned, Michael Hayes, okay, I'm going into the Hall of Fame. I'm going to enjoy every single minute of it. I'm going to love it. I'm going to savor every minute of it. And you can just tell he was in one of those, this is my night. I'm having my cake, my ice cream. I don't care what happens. I mean, he was doing a lot of shooting from the hip during his induction speech that, like, I'm going, wonder how much trouble this guy is going to be getting into. But overall, I would definitely have to say it was an enjoyable Hall of Fame ceremony. Going forward, WWE, they're going to have to do a better job with the time restraints. They've got to do a better time with the time restraints. How you going to come on at 8 o'clock on the East Coast and you go off at 11:45, 11:50 p.m. Eastern? That's a little bit way too long. That's a lot of sitting for people to be doing. You feel where I'm coming from? I mean, of course, you have the occasional stand up, clap, 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 all that other good stuff, but that's a lot of sitting for folks to do. And it's interesting, too, because Michael Hayes, at one point, he said, we got to make sure we don't have this go into overtime where we're trying to have this be like 90 minutes. And honestly, if that's their goal, to like have it be 90 minutes, then that's what they really need to like try to stick to. They really do. I mean, I don't know what's so hard with telling these people, okay, look, what do you want to say? What's some of the stories that you want to talk about or whatever? Make the bullet points, but like, I don't know, maybe with each person that's going to be going into the Hall of Fame, maybe you could put some type of watch on them and program it in a way where their wristwatch will vibrate, basically letting them know, like, okay, you're like 5 minutes into this story, you need to make your point in like 3 minutes or less, because and just kind of like keep doing it like that. Or maybe they can like put a stopwatch that's like right there, for each inductee. They get their own respected stopwatch, and maybe they could kind of do something like that, kind of have it be a little bit conspicuous so that folks don't see what they're fiddling around with or whatever. You could put like a bottle of water right there and all that, but maybe they could do a little something like that, and maybe that could kind of help cut down on the time a bit, because I can only imagine how much of a headache it is for the guys when it comes to them editing it. But other than them trimming it down, I mean, overall it was definitely pretty solid. I must admit that it was definitely pretty solid. All right, so I want to take this time out. If there were those of you maybe via YouTube that were posting some comments or whatever, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity now. If you had saw the Hall of Fame, I'm going to try to see if maybe we could pull up some comments. I'm not really expecting any comments, considering it's a Saturday night. Everybody's probably out clubbing or whatever. So if you are commenting, I don't know nothing about it right now. I probably won't see it until we get done doing the stream here via YouTube. And while I'm checking on if there's any YouTube comments, I do want to just remind you guys again, for those of you that missed the NXT TakeOver Dallas reaction show, it is now available on the downloads via YouTube. It's also available iTunes, all the great usual suspected downloading links there. So go check it out when you guys get an opportunity. And Free to Be Me 1 for Sting to say, see you soon. Something is going down. I agree. I'm kind of thinking like, is it maybe possible he's going to be like the new sheriff for Monday Night Raw? If maybe he's going to be like appointed to be the new Raw sheriff or Raw GM by Shane McMahon or something like that. I thought that was kind of interesting as well. Free to Be. I thought that was definitely very interesting as well. I think there might be a couple of more comments, but I'm not like able to see them right now. Let me try to. Yeah, I don't really see any other coming in, because I know ever since Google broke away from YouTube, there's been like a delay in getting the comments. I'll definitely check Twitter one more time, see if you guys are saying anything. But if y'all ain't got nothing to say, that works better for me, because like I said, I want to save up my energy, and we'll talk about WrestleMania, which, by the way, we will have that WrestleMania post show for you guys on the East Coast as soon as it concludes. And I also want to take this time out and remind you guys, I'm going to try to see if we can bring the phone line back. So for those of you that maybe want to call in, you guys will definitely be able to do that. Okay, so that's going to do it, man. I'm going ahead. I'm going to shut this down. Those of you that's maybe looking to download this in a little bit. Oh, I almost forgot one highlight of the night. I can't end this stream without mentioning this. I can't end the show without mentioning this. I got to go back to the Freebirds thing. So at one point we had Kerry Von Erich come out. And boy, did the crowd rip him a new you-know-what. And I'm going to tell you the reason why they ripped him a new you-know-what. So at one point, he says something about the New Day. Like, I guess how great they are or something like that. But when he references them, he says those new gay boys. And the crowd, they started heckling. You heard the hisses, and boy, I tell you, Kerry was just, I felt so bad for the guy. I felt so bad, but it's like, isn't he like in his 60s now or something like that? I mean, and he looked so like, look, man, I love the Von Erich family. I appreciate everything that they have done for the business. Do you guys remember the year when Kerry Von Erich went into the Hall of Fame and all that? Remember how he was dressed in a really nice suit and all that? And I'm kind of thinking to myself, Kerry, you couldn't come out and wear that same suit? You couldn't rent that suit for 5 minutes? He came out looking like a bum tonight. I mean with all due respect, because I damn sure don't mean any disrespect to a legendary wrestler like Kerry Von Erich. Grew up on those guys. I remember the few, all that. A lot of us do. So, please don't anybody misconstrue what I'm saying and think I'm trying to crack on Kerry Von Erich and the Von Erich family, because I'm not. All I'm saying is, my God, you're coming out for a very important moment. And okay, Jimmy Garvin, he was dressed in the tux and all that. Michael Hayes, look, he was trying to play up to his character. I get that. I got no problem with that. All right? But Kerry Von Erich couldn't come out in a suit. I mean, he literally looked like he had just got done sleeping on the sofa for a series of hours. And he just rolled out and was like, oh man, I messed up. I'm supposed to be somewhere. And he just hurry up and got in his truck and he went to the Hall of Fame ceremony. His hair didn't look, he looks as though he had skipped the makeup department and wardrobe department. It's how was he able to make a beeline from all that and come out there on the stage like that? It was just whoa, this is a once a year type of event and you can't dress up. Even Stone Cold Steve Austin dressed up. It's what the hell? Even Vader dressed up. Come on, man. But yeah, he said those new gay boys. We'll end the show on that note. I'll see you guys for WrestleMania Sunday. We'll be doing that live for you guys. We'll do that for you guys Sunday night as soon as it concludes. And remember, if you're not following me on Twitter already, make sure you do so. Twitter at the RCWR Show. Like me, check out my Facebook page over at Infinity One Productions. All the links you need is in this episode description. Alright, so check it out. Support me on Patreon. Again, all the links you need in the episode description. That's going to do it. Until next go round, please everybody be safe. Most importantly, be kind to one another. YouTube, if you enjoyed the presentation and you want me to keep doing these Hall of Fame specials, make sure you give me that thumbs up. Good night to YouTube. We'll see you next go round. And Spreaker audience, one more time, especially those of you that's going to be checking this out on the downloads. Appreciate the love and the support. Again, can't thank you guys enough tremendously as you've been representing and checking out all the great content. We've been trying to pump it out for you guys all this week. This is WrestleMania weekend, so we got another show in the books. We've got WrestleMania, and then there will be a special RCWR show Monday night after Raw concludes. Yes, we will be coming on live after Raw concludes. That's going to be a very short show. All I want to do is talk about Raw and roll out. That's pretty much how we're going to do it. So, again, thank you guys so much. Another show in the books. On to WrestleMania. I hope that these guys are going to be able to deliver a home fucking run, because what those men and women did at the NXT TakeOver on Friday night, that was some top-notch grade A quality type of shit, let me tell you. Alright guys, I'll be interacting with you during WrestleMania Sunday. Rest well. Going to be a very, very busy Sunday in a little bit. Take care, guys.